boys and girls. It's the Bookworm. I'm back with another bedtime story. I'm sorry, it's been a busy week, and so this one's going to drop a little late. I'm going to drop 2 episodes tomorrow, well tonight, early this morning, and going to have 2. And we're going to continue with our Christmas theme, and first up, we're going to read The Polar Express. The Polar Express, written and illustrated by Chris Van Allsburg. On Christmas Eve many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound a friend had told me I'd never hear. The ringing bells of Santa's sleigh. There is no Santa, my friend had insisted, but I knew he was wrong. Late that night I did hear sounds, though not of ringing bells. From outside came the sounds of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through my window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. You see, there's the little boy. He's looking out of his window. That would be kind of unusual to see a train in your yard, I think. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. A conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest, then looked up at my window. I put on my slippers and robe. I tiptoed downstairs and out the door. "All aboard!" the conductor cried out. I ran up to him. "Well," he said, "are you coming?" "Where?" I asked. "Why, to the North Pole, of course," was his answer. "This is the Polar Express." I took his outstretched hand and he pulled me aboard. And there we see the Polar Express. The train was filled with other children, all in their pajamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols and ate candies with nougat centers as white as snow. We drank hot cocoa as thick and rich as melted chocolate bars. Outside, the lights of towns and villages flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward. And you can see the cooks passing out the delicious, yummy food. That hot chocolate sounds good. I kind of want some hot chocolate now. How about you guys? Soon there were no more lights to be seen. We traveled through cold, dark forest where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train as it thundered through the quiet wilderness. And there we see the wolves in the woods as the train goes through the woods. Wolves are probably my favorite animals. We climbed mountains so high it seemed as if we would scrape the moon, but the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, rolling over peaks and through valleys like a car on a roller coaster. And there you see the Polar Express going up the mountain. The mountains turned into hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed a barren desert of ice, the great polar ice cap. Lights appeared in the distance. They looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing on a frozen sea. "There," said the conductor, "is the North Pole." And so we see the Polar Express heading on, and we can see in the distance, we see the lights of the North Pole. It'd be kind of fun to visit the North Pole. The North Pole, it was a huge city standing alone at the top of the world, filled with factories everywhere. Filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first we saw no elves. "They're gathering at the center of the city," the conductor told us. "That is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas." "Who receives the first gift?" we all asked. The conductor answered, "He will choose one of you." Well, that would be very cool to be chosen by Santa to get the first gift of Christmas. And there's the Polar Express pulling into the North Pole. "Look," shouted one of the children, "the elves. Outside we saw hundreds of elves. As our train drew closer to the center of the North Pole, we slowed to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the Polar Express could go no further, we stopped and the conductor led us outside. And so there we see all the elves gathered in the streets, and it's very crowded. We pressed through the crowd to the edge of a large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. The reindeer were excited. They pranced and paced, ringing the silver sleigh bells that hung from their harnesses. It was a magical sound like nothing I'd ever heard. Across the circle, the elves moved apart, and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly. He marched over to us and, pointing to me, said, "Let's have this fellow here." He jumped into his sleigh. The conductor handed me up. I sat on Santa's knee, and he asked, "Now what would you like for Christmas?" And so there we see the elves, and there we see Santa. Very cool, very cool. I knew that I could have any gift I could imagine, but the thing I wanted most for Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag. What I wanted more than anything was one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. When I asked, Santa smiled. Then he gave me a hug and told an elf to cut a bell from a reindeer's harness. The elf tossed it up to Santa. He stood holding the bell high above him and called out, "The first gift of Christmas." And so there we see Santa with the bell from the reindeer's harness and the little boy. I think that was a very neat gift to ask for, because it's something you couldn't get anywhere else. A clock struck midnight as the elves roared their approval. Santa handed the bell to me, and I put it in my bathrobe pocket. The conductor helped me down from the sleigh. Santa shouted out the reindeers' names and cracked his whip. His team charged forward and climbed into the air. Santa circled once above us, then disappeared in the cold, dark polar sky. And there we see Santa taking off with his reindeer and all the people down below, the elves and the children. That would be quite a sight to see. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see the bell. I reached into my pocket, but the only thing I felt was a hole. I had lost the silver bell from Santa Claus' sleigh. "Let's hurry outside and look for it," one of the children said. But the train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home. And there's the kids asking to see the bell, and he's looking sad because he's lost the bell. I've lost things that were important to me. Have you guys ever lost anything that was important to you? I know it makes us sad. It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train reached my house, I sadly left the other children. I stood at my doorway and waved goodbye. The conductor said something from the moving train, but I couldn't hear him. "What?" I yelled out. He cupped his hands around his mouth. "Merry Christmas," he shouted. The Polar Express let out a loud blast from its whistle and sped away. And there's the little boy standing in his door, waving goodbye to the train. On Christmas morning, my little sister Sarah and I opened our presents. When it looked as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one last small box behind the tree. It had my name on it. Inside was the silver bell. There was a note. "Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket. Signed, Mr. C." I shook the bell. It made the most beautiful sound my sister and I had ever heard. But my mother said, "Oh, that's too bad." "Yes," said my father, "it's broken." When I'd shaken the bell, my parents had not heard a sound. And there's the little boy with his sister, and they're looking in the tiny box at the bell. And it's funny how their parents can't hear the bell. But you know, I think children often can see and hear things that we adults don't, because sometimes we forget to notice the magic around us. So always remind the adults in your life to stop and look at the magic and listen. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as the years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me as it does for all who truly believe. And there's the bell. That is such a great and magical story, and I love it, guys. And I want to send out a very special wishes to my three little friends, Della, Ashy, and Leola. I know you guys have had some sad times, but I want you to know I love you guys, and I'm thinking about you. And all your friends here at the Bookworm's Bedtime Stories are thinking about you. And I'll see you guys next time.